Now I am going to introduce myself. I am Sri Duryodhan Meher, ex-principal and reader in English, GPR College Kuntara, District Sambalpur, State Odisha. Today I am going to teach all of you a very interesting poem called The Ballad of Father Gilligan, composed by W.B. Yeats. Introduction of the author. W.B. Yeats is an Irish poet, dramatist and mystic. He was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923, warm up. The Ballad of Father Gilligan has a ballad form, a narrative poem, usually sung with regular short stanzas that tell a story. In this poem, Yeats narrates a profoundly meaningful story, and it has a more overtly religious content than most of his poems. The story is about a priest who, being emotionally and physically worn out, fell into deep slumber. As he woke up, he was horrified by the fact that he could not make it to the bedside of the sick man before he died, and that no one had performed the rites of blessings for the dying. The divine presence in the guise of the priest is an affirmation of a loving and kind God. Study the poem and find out how Yeats glorifies God. Text. The old priest, Peter Gilligan, was weary night and day, for half his flock were in their beds or under green swords lay. In other words, the old priest called Peter Gilligan was very tired, both day and night, because half of his sheep flock were in their beds and buried in the graveyard. And they were also buried under the green grass of the ground. मोर कहबार अर्थ यही कि जे वृद्ध पाद्री श्रीजुक्त पीटर गिलिगन बहुत क्लांत हो जाउथिले दिन सारा तथा रात्रि सारा एवं अधरो अधिक तार समस्त मेंढा गुड़िक से माने मरी जाइथिले एवं समाधि तले पोती जाइथिले. Once while he nodded on a chair at the moth hour of eve, another poor man sent for him, and he began to grieve. So Peter Gilligan was nodding and moving on an armchair at his home. It was half evening. By that time, a poor gentleman sent a man to him. So when he saw that man, Peter Gilligan started to grieve and he became sorry. अर्थात ଯେତେବେଳେ ପିଟର ଗିଲିଗନ୍ ଗୋଟାଏ ଆର୍ମ ଚେୟାରରେ ବସିଥିଲେ ଏବଂ ଝୁଲୁଥିଲେ, ସେ ସମୟ ଥିଲା ଅର୍ଦ୍ଧ ସନ୍ଧ୍ୟା ସମୟ। ସେତେବେଳେ ଜଣେ ଗରିବ ବ୍ୟକ୍ତି ଆଉ ଜଣେ ବ୍ୟକ୍ତିକୁ ଗିଲିଗନ୍ ପାଖକୁ ପଠେଇଲା। ଗିଲିଗନ୍ ଯେତେବେଳେ ସେ ଗରିବ ଲୋକକୁ ଦେଖିଲେ, ସେ ଦୁଃଖ ପ୍ରକାଶ କଲେ। I have no rest, nor joy, nor peace, for people die and die, and after cried he, God forgive. My body spake, not I. On the other hand, the priest Peter Gilligan says that he has got no rest, no joy, no peace of mind, because people were dying and dying like flies and buried in the graveyard. And after Peter Gilligan begged forgiveness from the God, and once again he said that his body spoke, not himself. अर्थात पीटर गिलिगन कहला जे तार कौनसी क्लांत नेबार समय नहीं, आनंद नहीं, शांति नहीं मनर, कारण लोक गुड़ाक केवल मरी जाउथिले। एवं पुणी से कहला, हे भगवान मत क्षमा दियो, मोर शरीरटा कहला मु कही नहीं। He knelt and leaning on the chair, he prayed and fell asleep, and the moth hour went from the field, and star began to peep. So Peter Gilligan knelt down on the ground, and he leaned on the chair. He prayed to God and slept. By that time, the moth hour passed away from the fields and ground, and the stars of the sky in millions started to glitter and gleam and peep. मोर कहबार अर्थ यही जे पीटर गिलिगन तले आंठू माड़ी बसिला, चौकी रे उधेई हला एवं भगवान को प्रार्थना कला एवं सोई पड़िला। सेही समय रे संध्या समयटा, गोधूली समयटा प्रांतरु उभे गला एवं आकाशर लक्ष लक्ष तारा गुड़िक जुलु जुलु होई जली उठिले। They slowly into millions grew and leaves shook in the wind, and God covered the whole world with shade and whispered to mankind. In other words, the millions of stars in the sky which were glittering, and when the leaves of the trees shook in the gentle wind and breeze, then God shrouded and covered the whole world with a long and wide sheet and whispered in the ears of the people, O people, you go to sleep because night has approached. ଅର୍ଥାତ୍ ଆକାଶର କୋଟି କୋଟି ତାରା ଯେଉଁମାନେ ଜୁଳୁ ଜୁଳୁ ହୋଇ ଜଳୁଥିଲେ ସେ ସମୟରେ ଗଛ ଗୁଡ଼ିକର ପତ୍ର ଗୁଡ଼ିକ ମୃଦୁ ମଳୟରେ ହଲିବାକୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ କଲେ ଏବଂ ଭଗବାନ ସାରା ବିଶ୍ୱକୁ ଗୋଟେ ଚାଦରରେ ଘୋଡ଼େଇ ଦେଲେ ଏବଂ ସାରା ସମାଜକୁ ମଣିଷ ସମାଜକୁ କହିଲେ ହେ ମଣିଷମାନେ ରାତ୍ରି ହୋଇ ଆସିଲା ତୁମେ ସବୁ ଶୋଇପଡ଼ upon the time of spiritual when the moss came once more the old priest Peter Gilligan stood upright on the floor. That means in the dawn or in the morning, the sparrows started twittering and chirping. The moths, small insects, came once again in the atmosphere. The old priest Peter Gilligan stood upright on the floor of his house. ଅର୍ଥାତ୍ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଛୋଟ ଛୋଟ ଚଢ଼େଇମାନେ କେଁ କଟର ଶବ୍ଦ ଆରମ୍ଭ କଲେ ସେହି ସମୟରେ ସନ୍ଧ୍ୟା ସମୟ ଗଡ଼ିଗଲା ଏବଂ ବୃଦ୍ଧ ପାଦ୍ରୀ ପିଟର ଗିଲଗେନ୍ ଚଟାଣରେ ଭୂଇଁରେ ତଳେ ଆଣ୍ଠୁ ମାଡ଼ି ବସି ରହିଲା. Mebron, the man has died while I spent on the chair. He roused the horse out of its sleep and rode with little care. That means the priest Peter Gilligan started crying and he said, Mavron means suddenly he slept on the chair. By that time, the moth hour, the evening hour passed away. He went to his stable, roused his horse, and rode with a great speed through the lane of the village. অর্থাৎ পাদ্রী পিটর গিলিগান হঠাৎ উঠিলা তার চৌকিলু সে চিৎকার কলা মাভরন বলি শীঘ্র কহিলা সে যেতলে চৌকিরে শোইଥିଲା সেই সময়ে সন্ধ্যা সময় গড়িগলা সে চিৎকার কলা এবং তা ঘোড়াକୁ উঠেইলা নিদରୁ ତାପରେ ସେ ଦ୍ରୁତ ଗତିରେ ଗଳି କନ୍ଦି ମାଧ୍ୟମରେ ତା ଘୋଡ଼ାକୁ ବହୁତ ଜୋରରେ ଚଳାଇଲା. He rode now as he never rode by rocky lane and fen. The sick man's wife opened the door. Father, you come again. I mean to say that the priest Peter Gilligan rode his horse with such a great speed that he have never ridden. He went on the horse through the rocky lane and fen of the village. The wife of the sick man opened the door of the house and cried out, "Father, why did you come once again?" मोर कहबार अर्थ यही जे जेतेबेले पाद्री पीटर गिलिगन अति द्रुत गति ता घोड़ा को गलिकंदी भितरे चलाइला से देखा पाइला से रोगग्रस्त स्त्री जनक ता घरर कबाट खोलीदेला एवं कहला, आपण पुणी थरे कहीं आसिले? And is the poor man dead? He cried. He died an hour ago. The priest Peter Gilligan in grief swayed to and fro. I mean to make you understand that the poor little fellow was found to be dead. And Peter Gilligan cried out, the wife of the poor man cried out that my husband died an hour before. The old priest Peter Gilligan, with a mood of grief, moved to and fro on the house of the sick man's wife. अर्थात से गरीब व्यक्ति चित्कार करी कही उठिला जे से लोकटा गोटाए घंटा पूर्व तो मरीगला। वृद्ध पाद्री पीटर गिलगन दुखरे एपट सेपट हेबाको लागिला। When you were gone, he turned and died as merry as a bird. The old priest Peter Gilligan, he knelt him at that word. That means when the man was gone and died as merry as a little bird of the tree, the old Peter Gilligan knelt down on the ground. मोर कहबार अर्थ यही जे जेतेबेले पाद्री आज्ञा चलीगले से गरीब लोकटा मरीगला मुक्त विहंग भलिया एवं वृद्ध पाद्री पीटर गिलगन तले आंठुमाड़ी बसी रहिला। He who hath made the night of stars for souls who tire and bleed sent one of its great angels down to help me in my need. In other words, जो भगवान यही सारा ब्रह्मांड कोटि कोटि तारा गढ़ी जार आत्मा गुड़िक क्लांतरे रक्ताक्त हो जाइछंती से भगवान तांकर जने विशिष्ट ଦୂତ ପୃଥିବୀ ପୃଷ୍ଠକୁ ପଠାଇଛନ୍ତି ଲୋକମାନଙ୍କୁ ସାହାଯ୍ୟ କରିବା ପାଇଁ। He who is wrapped in purple robes with planets in his care had pity on the list of things asleep upon a chair. In other words, ଯେଉଁ ଭଗବାନ ରାଜାଙ୍କ ଭଳିଆ ଲାଲ ରଙ୍ଗର ପୋଷାକରେ ଆବୃତ ହୋଇଛନ୍ତି, ଯାହାଙ୍କର ଆଦେଶରେ ସାରା ବ୍ରହ୍ମାଣ୍ଡ କୋଟି କୋଟି ତାରା ଗ୍ରହ ଗୁଡ଼ିକ ଚାଲନ୍ତି, ତାଙ୍କର ବିଶେଷ ଦୟା ଥାଏ ଛୋଟ ଛୋଟ ଜିନିଷ ଉପରେ। ଏବଂ ସେତେବେଳେ ସେଇ ପାଦ୍ରୀ ଜଣକ ତାଙ୍କ ଚୌକିରେ ଶୋଇପଡ଼ିଥାନ୍ତି। ଅର୍ଥାତ୍ ପାଦ୍ରୀ ଜଣକ ଯେତେବେଳେ ଶୋଇଛନ୍ତି ତାଙ୍କର ଚୌକିରେ, ସେ ସମୟରେ ଭଗବାନ ତାଙ୍କର ସମସ୍ତ କାର୍ଯ୍ୟ ଭଲ ଭାବରେ ଚଳାଇଛନ୍ତି, କରିଛନ୍ତି। Thanking you, my dear friends and students. Now I conclude my teaching and speech.